All right, so let me. Oh, there we go. We got DC's People's Champ, and we've got live in the man cave. I think we've got Arun and Tim on screen. Yeah, there we go. This is the first time we've had
Boom.
two people in studio, I think, in a very, very long time. So, I don't know if I'm going to do a screen share tonight. I'll go over some of the stats. I think it's just going to take up too much of the real estate, and the cameras are going to get shrunk too much, but. I mean, it's honestly a whole lot of losses. So it's not like
All else.
So it's not like we need to really be putting that up on the screen so much. But I will, quickly break down some general stats about each one. Then I will also get all of your guys' opinion on it as well. So Arun, welcome officially to the man cave. It's nice to see you. And Champ, how are you doing tonight?
Konbanwa, yoroshiku onegaishimasu. I mean, it was Japanese Heritage Night tonight, and we shit the bed. What else I say?
The bride.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So it's tough. I mean, Porzingis got hurt. I mean, and then we were kind of donezo after that.
Yeah.
So we made it somewhat respectable. We kept it within 10 points. It wasn't like a complete blowout, but at the same time, they just could not make inroads, especially in the fourth quarter. And it was just a generally not a great night for them. But let me pull up some just quick stat here for well, actually, let's just go back a little bit and then we'll get to tonight's game. If it was gonna be a win, I was gonna start with it, but it's not, so it's not getting the extra treatment. So let's go back a week. So the first game was against Chicago. That was actually a relatively close game. The Bulls started off strong, outscoring 29-22. The Wizards came back, outscored 27-23 in the second, outscored 32-28 in the third, and in the fourth quarter, the Bulls just barely outscored them by 35-30 for a 115-111 victory. I'll start off with you, Champ. What were your thoughts on this close game with the Bulls?
I think this was the start of a trend this week with this Wizards team that you need your big three. You need Kuz, you need Porzingis, and you need Beal. Beal was not playing in this game, and the other two of the big three carried. They had each 28 and 21 respectively, and you had 6 players in double figures, including Daniel Gafford off the bench with 10. But it just wasn't enough. And it all boils down to simple things like defense. It all boils down to to the thing of this is not a 3-point shooting team. And it showed again. And it also showed with free throw shooting. They were poor from the charity stripe. And all of that is all encompassing of what happened with this team. And again, they dominate in points in the paint. That's what they do. They didn't dominate. They outscored them in points in the paint, which is what they do. They're a paint playing team. They need to play to that and continue to play to that, and not play to shooting threes and chucking up threes all day long. They lost by 4, but if they had tightened it up at the free throw line, taken less 3-pointers, and played more in the paint, I think they win this game. So obviously, it's a very disappointing loss.
Yeah, Tim, I'll go to you next. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, generally the Bulls aren't great this year, so the Wizards definitely had a winnable game that they lost here. I think, like Ken said, if they were healthier, they probably could win this game. They've just been absolutely killed by injuries lately and playing a lot of subs and bringing up guys from the go-go. So it's been a rough go. The Wizards also just aren't good enough to play a lot of their subs and be successful. Their second team really has struggled this year. And I think just not being able to close out some of these games is getting to them mentally, because, they're usually pretty competitive, but they often will kind of wilt in the fourth quarter. So not a good trend.
Yeah. Everyone, what's your thoughts on this game?
Denny did a good job guarding DeRozan in this game, but as Ken alluded to, Bradley Beal was out, and the Wizards beat the Bulls early in the season with Beal, and without him, they lost the close one. And Zach LaVine was healthy in this game. In the first game, he wasn't. The Bulls were going to take care of. It seemed like they were going to take care of business at home, and they ended up doing so. And the Wizards' offense down the stretch, and like we need somebody to generate a clutch basket. And Beal's not really great in the clutch, but the Wizards kind of struggle even more so without him.
Yeah. All right, the next one was against the Indiana Pacers in Indiana. The Wizards started off actually fairly strong, scored 33 in the first, outscored the Pacers by 2. But then the Pacers came back in the second, outscored the Wizards by 6. The Wizards, then they outscored by 2 in the third, and then 4 in the fourth, and ultimately a 10-point victory, 121 to 111. Porzingis had a pretty decent night, but overall just wasn't enough. Start with you, Champ. What were some of your thoughts on it?
Once again, 2 of the big 3 carried again. Porzingis with 29 and Kuzma with 27. And Abdia actually had a decent game with 14. And you had Jordan Goodwin coming off the bench and playing a lot of minutes and scored 19 points. But you're not getting any other production from other players. Monte Morris and Kispert didn't even score in double figures. You just didn't get any production offensively from the rest of your team. And that's where you're going to struggle. And once again, 3-point shooting continues to be a problem for this Wizards team, shooting just under 35% from beyond the arc. And again, free throw shooting was a problem, 19 of 25 from the charity stripe. That's not going to win you many games. Points in the paint, once again, they played well in the paint, 52 to 40. So, but again, all the 3-point shooting and the poor 3-point shooting is what's costing this team a lot of games. And this was a winnable game against an average Pacers team. Like, they're not good, they're not great, they're average. They could have came in here and really did a number on them, and obviously they just couldn't do it. And clearly, beyond whether people want to believe it or not, they need to get used to the fact that you need your big 3. You need Beal. You need him, period. And if you don't have him there to have those 25 plus points a game, you're not going to win.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with you, Tim. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I would just say another winnable game. Indiana was the first opponent this year, and the Wizards went in and won pretty easily on the road. I know Indiana's kind of figured things out, and Halliburton's been really good, and they're playing a little bit better. But I think this is a game that the Wizards would have won if they were healthy. And they've actually played pretty well in the first half, but they just let this slip away. I thought a lot of games, like the one I went to against the Lakers, for example, the Wizards really don't play very hard defensively. And I thought at least in the first half of this game, they had some defensive intensity, but just they're not deep enough. And I just feel like, Porzingis has played really well, but a lot of his best efforts have been wasted in losses. And it's just kind of sad because now he's banged up. So I don't know if we'll have all of the weapons kind of playing together healthy.
Yeah. Arun, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Halliburton pretty much dominated like this game. I think he had double-double, and the Wizards passed on him over Denny or in the 2019 draft, so they probably regret that a lot. And I think that was kind of I think a lot of people wanted that Halliburton at the time. So it wasn't like just like in hindsight it's really bad, but also at the time it's kind of now I guess even now it's getting even worse. But Monte Morris and as Ken alluded to, didn't really have a good game against him, and Will Barton's been awful. Like he had a good game tonight, but he's been awful for most of the year. And
People are trying to convince me that he's really good, but I just have not seen it. I just don't know.
The second unit struggles, I think, partially because of him.
And and Rui's also, I guess, like Rui's
hurt.
been playing really bad defensively, but now they're missing his scoring off the bench. And even though Gafford's kind of dependable, more so lately, their bench has kind of struggled. And Miles Turner, since he's back in the lineup, the Pacers have won the last 2. The Wizards did win opening night by a lot, but maybe that, like, if they don't have Beal, as Ken alluded to, they're probably not going to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah,
Tank mode.
It's just frustrating. At this point, it was weird because he did so well for a time there. It's kind of the fool's goal that hit us last
The first
year.
2 weeks, people were texting me like, "Are the Wizards actually good?" I was like,
Then they went on a dip, but then like the last like a couple weeks ago, they were good again.
Yeah, but
yeah,
but that
Yeah.
also was like the
One
case
good
in
week.
the bubble season. I think they also were like 3-3 before the bubble without Bill, and everyone's like, oh, maybe they could make the playoffs, and then they went like 0-8 in that bubble. So
they got one win at the end.
yeah,
think.
against the Celtics, and
Yeah.
the Celtics rested all their
0-7.
players.
Yeah.
So I think the Wizards are definitely worse without Beal, but now I guess now the people on Twitter can complain about something else right now, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know what to expect this time. So anyway, so the next game I was actually thinking about going to was the other retro hat, the one that we went to the room was, the black one, the white one was for the Clippers game, and I was thinking about messaging you guys and going to that game, but I was like, I don't know, I just don't have this good feeling about this week.
Mike Edgley one I know.
And
The John Wall,
yeah.
he's probably cheering when John Wall.
Yeah.
That's my
and he loves John Wall.
Yeah, it's interesting that I read a really nice article. I think it was in Sports Illustrated. Or was it ESPN? It was one of them, but about John Wall's return to DC and how much he really loves this area, and how excited he was to play here, and how bummed he was that it kept on getting screwed up by COVID, and like
yeah,
then he
his
wanted
first game back
to get like a certain share, but like someone had already bought the tickets, and and so it's emotional because he's got a lot of memories tied up with his mom here. He really talked about how important she was to him, and his children never got to come to DC because they were too young, I believe. I think they've been born in the last couple of years, and so I think this was like one of the first games they got to go to in DC. So it's an emotional return for him, and it's just like as we could use a good point guard right now, but I just feel like we can't really afford
not him.
him for what he does at this point in his career. Going through the scoring real fast, the Wizards start off pretty well, outscored them 29-28. In the second, they outscored them 34-32, but in the third, they're outscored by the Clippers by 5, and they're outscored by 5 once again in the fourth for a 114-107 victory. And overall, John Wall didn't have like a crazy good game. He had 13 points. But it was just obviously a very emotional game for him. And Kuzma put up 35, Porzingis put up 30, but just ultimately wasn't enough team defense. And we just didn't have that third scorer that we need. So Goodwin put in 17, and Denny put in 11, but that was it. It just wasn't a lot of secondary scoring after that. And just kind of a rough game overall. I'll start with you, Champ. What were some of your thoughts on it? Champ?
I think your audio might have cut.
No, sorry, I was distracted. So this game with the Clippers was interesting. John Wall comes back to DC. He gets a big ovation. People here in DC still love him, and rightfully so. He was the franchise player before he was shipped out. He scored 13 points on this night, so not bad in 29 minutes. Paul George absolutely went off. PG-13 had 36, which is insane. Once again, the two of the big three carried the team again. Kuz had 35 with 12 rebounds, so a double-double, 30 and 12 and 15 for Kristaps, which is another double-double. But again, no real production from anybody else on the team. And that's where the problem lies. You can't rely on Kuz and Porzingis. You have to, everybody else has to contribute. Once again, 3-point shooting was a little bit better, just 47%. But again, they're not a good 3-point shooting team, and they shot better from the free throw line. But the Clippers only missed one free throw. And all in all, it was just a very, not very good performance for the Wizards. Though this was a game that worried me because they were traveling back from Indianapolis, facing the Pacers, and then having to play this game the very next night at home. So that was kind of the worry for me, is that, the legs wouldn't be underneath them, having played a game and then having to travel and then play another game. So this was bound to be a loss for the Wizards. I think I called it this was going to be a loss for the Wizards, and it turned out to be a loss for the Wizards.
Yeah. I'll go to you next. And what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Well, a couple of things. Obviously, Ken's right. I mean, to do a back-to-back where you have to travel from Indiana, that's not really close and kind of tough. Like the schedule makers didn't help. I think that partially explains why the Wizards were in this game really towards the very end, and they had a chance to win in the last minute or so. They really tanked and did not close this game well. But I do think this is an indictment on the roster a little bit. Like the fact that your lottery pick, Johnny Davis, is still down in the minors, the G League, and we brought 3 other players up from them just to fill out the bench, and he's not one of them. That just kind of shows that Tommy Shepard probably made a bad pick, and his trades don't look as good as like a month ago. I mean, KCP, I think, is definitely outplaying like Will Barton and what we got back for that. But I mean, he wasn't happy, but just Tommy Shepard has had some misses, and I'm really disappointed that Davis
Yeah, he's
can't
like
even
a big bust. Like,
a
I
big
don't-
like to not even play like 5-10 minutes a game when the roster is depleted is like kind of bad. So
yeah.
he's just can't even crack the lineup, and they have 3 or 4 G League guys like this whole week on the roster, not playing a lot, but like Goodwin is a good find, but he's basically playing the role that Davis could play, like
So
off
if
the
we could
bench.
redraft it, is there a guard that's like Davis is doing much better? You think that we should have done instead?
I think there was like Tari Eason. He was like guard, but he's like a power forward for Houston. I think he would definitely since Rui's out, they need some like small forward, power forward, just another scorer. I think Goodwin has done kind of what he's even been in some cases defensively he's better than Morris. I think that's kind of what the Wizards are expecting. I kind of have to look at the draft. Like on the top of my head, I don't think there's like a point guard that's coming to mind that they could have had, but I think Johnny Davis was definitely looking like he's looking like a bust right now. It's still really early. He is a hard worker, but if it's not he basically is not very athletic, and he's not a good 3-point shooter, so that's not really going to get you into the rotation if you're not a good shooter. And just getting to John Wall, I think he's looking good with the Clippers, but he's not asked to do much. Like if he scored 13 points, and Goodwin, he's had better games with that. It's just that the Clippers have a lot better talent, like Kawhi Leonard. He had played limited minutes, and Paul George played well. And I think the Wizards, they epically collapsed against the Clippers last year. So even though they were winning and Kuzma hit his first 6 threes, you still felt like the Clippers would come back. And then in crunch time, Porzingis, I believe, got a shot blocked by in the clutch. And again, they're missing Beal, or maybe just Wes Unseld needs to do a better job calling plays. And the Clippers coach, Tyronn Lue, he's a pretty good head coach too, so maybe that had something to do with it. But
I actually like Tyronn Lue when he's a player. So I want to scoring update.
Wizards.
So yeah, wow, that's a bad fumble. So the Cardinals fumbled it, and the Patriots picked it up and returned it for a touchdown with the extra point coming right now, and it is good.
Yeah, he hit it.
So they're now up 20-13 with 5:32 left in the third quarter. I know that Carly would be excited about that. This is a big swing because it was a good catch, but he just kind of held it way out there, and it was just
You can one-handed it. And one-handed it.
Yeah, I don't think,
more steroids.
yeah, so
That left-hand steroid strength.
yeah, you just gotta hold it much better than
My
that.
B,
I just
my
don't-
bad.
Yeah, anything is his fault, but
It is.
anyway, it is.
I hate
It's a
it.
touchdown. So
Yeah, scrub.
and Jeff Clark live in chat says I called it a pick up 6. Yeah, it says that a pick
True.
up. So yeah, it's true. It's so that's good. So is DeAndre Hopkins, who's actually usually pretty good for them. So it's kind of surprising. One of their better players. Any other thoughts on the Clippers before we move on to tonight's game?
No, just a good effort on a back-to-back, but ultimately not enough for a win.
Yeah. All right. Next game is tonight's game, which started off pretty badly. The Nets outscored them 29-25. Added to that 33-30, outscored them in the second. Outscored them in the third, 32-28. And the Wizards were outscored in the fourth as well, 18-17, lower scoring in that one. But yeah, just outscored in every quarter and just
Get it
ultimately
done.
KD, Kevin Durant scored 30 points. Will Barton was our leading scorer with 22. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. Porzingis went out, only played 24 minutes, 20 points. Kuzma played 39, only had 20 points. Goodwin had 11. Will Barton had 22, again, as I mentioned before. And then Gafford had 10. But just overall, just not enough, especially on the defensive side. But there's just not a third scoring threat when you take Porzingis and you have Beal out. It's just hard to generate enough scoring in that. Champ, what are some of your thoughts about tonight's game?
This game was hard to watch. I watched this game from beginning to end. It was hard to watch. It really was. This is supposed to be a revenge game for the Wizards after losing to Brooklyn last week. And not only did they not get their revenge, but they let Brooklyn come into their own house on Japanese Heritage Night and just run them out of their own gym. Kevin Durant had a great game with 30 points. Kyrie Irving had 24. And it was just all bad from beginning to end. Kuzma and Porzingis each had 20, though Porzingis did leave the game with an injury. So that's going to be something you have to keep an eye on. Will Barton did step up and had 22. Daniel Gafford had a double-double, 10 wins, 10 points and 10 rebounds. But again, you're not getting the scoring output from everybody that you need to win these type of games against a talented team like the Brooklyn Nets. And then again, 3-point shooting was only 35.5%. Brooklyn didn't shoot any better from beyond the arc, but it didn't even matter because they made their shots from the charity stripe when they needed to. And it was this team is now on a 7-game losing streak. And now they're about to go on the West Coast. And there's a possibility that another member of the Big Three is about to be down for this upcoming road trip. And it's very, very disheartening to know that fact.
Yeah, I just don't think we're very good without some of these key players. We just don't have a very deep bench, and we just get very much exposed in these games, especially defensively. I just don't think we're going to hold my team to under 90 without some of our key players. But Tim, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, just the Nets really have the Wizards number. I think that's at least 3 losses to them this year. And I feel like Durant takes it personal when he plays the Wizards just because he really doesn't like how the fans kind of support him over the Wizards team and are basically cynical about the Wizards roster and franchise. And he's right, but doesn't make it any easier. And this game, the Wizards were competitive, but they were never really close. The Nets were just kind of toying with them, staying around, 6, 8, 10, 12-point lead the whole game. Very comfortable win for them. The Wizards got blown out much worse by the Nets this year, but they just haven't been really in their league, and it's disappointing because last year they played them a lot tougher, but it's looking bleak for the Wizards. Might be tank time.
Yeah. Do you think that you decide tank time this early? Do you decide
Yes.
A little early?
Yeah, for the Victor sweepstakes. Yeah, the
Just
7th.
in case.
Yeah, and even like if they get the number 5 pick, there's Cam Whitmore from Villanova, and looks like he's going to be a stud. And this seems like a really good draft to be taking for. And I mean, we're not going to play Porzingis if Porzingis has back tightness. There's no point like playing him. Like obviously, you want to try to play hard. You don't want to like purposely tank, but you also don't want to like play guys injured. Like you don't want to be able to rush back from a hamstring injury and ruin him potentially for next year. So ditto for Porzingis, who's very injury prone. Maybe let him have a game off, or in fact, when he came back from the last injury from a couple of days off, he played one of his best games of the season. He did have 20 points through 3 quarters. But this game, the Nets just seemed like they're way ahead, especially without Beal. They don't have the firepower to keep up. Like last time, the Wizards actually should have beaten the Nets but they missed a ton of free throws. And this one, just like I think Kevin Durant, he had like over 30, but it felt like even he was kind of taking it easy on the Wizards. Like he was just letting his teammates get involved. And when it got cut to like 6 points, then it's like, all right, let me score like a couple buckets, and then it was kind of over. And Denny, he made like a three after like completely like missing a 3-pointer, but he definitely has to step up. It's kind of, he needs to prove like just being a starter like on this team, especially with Porzingis out, he's gonna have to definitely score more. And same Corey Kispert.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about the week ahead. So we're going on a road trip. I'm just going to break down like how the next couple of weeks are going to go, and then I'll let you guys talk about the this upcoming week a little bit, and then we'll be back in 3 weeks to sort of recap. We're going to go on a long road trip. So we're at Denver at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, at Clippers 4 o'clock on Saturday. At Lakers, it's a 9:30 start local and Eastern time. Next Tuesday at Phoenix at 9, Thursday at Utah at 9, Friday at Sacramento at 10, and then we come home Tuesday, December 27th versus Philly. It's a 7 o'clock start. And then we play Phoenix the next day on Wednesday, December 28th, and then Friday, December 30th at Orlando, and that's the end of 2022. And then the following week, we are at Milwaukee at 8, and then another game at Milwaukee at 8. So it's both on Sunday and Tuesday. Back-to-back games in Milwaukee, which we've had that twice this season with back-to-back games on the road, which
they started doing that this year.
But I feel like I never see back-to-back where we're the home team.
No, they screw us every year though.
Yeah. So Friday, January 6th at Oklahoma City at 8 p.m. And then Monday, January 9th, when our podcast returns, we'll have a live show, or we'll break down the New Orleans Pelicans game at 7, and we'll also break down those two Milwaukee and the Oklahoma City game from earlier that week, and we'll also just go through quickly the scores of all the games that happened in between. But for me, this is a whole lot of losses coming up. Just this long road trip out west. It's just with a banged up team, it's not looking good. It might be time to tank. What are your thoughts, Champ, going in the next couple of weeks?
These next couple of weeks are going to be very, very tough. Honestly, they're going to be extremely tough. You're going on the road to the West Coast. I think that the Nuggets game could be a very interesting one indeed. You, at least with the LA leg of this, you're going to be in the same arena for the most part. So it's not like you're traveling. It's not like you're having to go anywhere, even though it is a back-to-back. The Clippers game is basically on the West Coast, a midday game. And then the Lakers game, it's an evening game. So at least you'll have some time to rest, have some time to get your legs underneath you and get back after it. And then you have a day of travel, and then you're visiting Phoenix. And then you have a day of travel going to Utah, and then you're back in California the next night. This schedule sucks for this West Coast trip. This schedule sucks. And then when you come back home, you have 2 games at home before you go back on the road to face the Magic before the calendar turns to 2023. And then that's weird that we're staying in Milwaukee for basically 3 to 4 days to play the Bucks twice. That's weird. Then you got to go to OKC before you're finally back home in DC. This is a schedule where I can't even sit here and tell you what games this team's going to win, because the way they've been playing these last 7 games, I could easily sit here, play the safe route and say, oh, they're going to lose them all. But I don't know that. They'll get Beal back eventually. Hopefully Porzingis' injury is not too serious and he doesn't miss too much time, because if you can get your big 3 back, clearly 2 of the big 3 have been carrying this team these last couple of games. If you can get Beal back, maybe that'll inspire the rest of the team to rally up and start producing. They start taking much better shots, smarter shots, stop chucking up a bunch of threes, play to their strengths, and maybe they can come out of this long stretch at least above 500, because they need to get it back. They're under 500 right now. badly. They need to get it back because the Eastern Conference is not as strong of a conference as the Western Conference. They need to start standing out and they need to start pushing forward because we're now about to go into 2023. The All-Star break is about a month and a half, 2 months away. And then it's going to be go time. They need to start ramping it up and start getting it together before then, because if they go into the All-Star break playing like this, I'm going to be on board with Tim and start thinking about tanking. And I never think about tanking. I'm never one to be like, oh, just take the whole season. Just take the whole effing season. I never think that way. I always want my teams to play hard every game. But if they continue to play like this going into 2023, I might finally give in and be like, just take the season, just forget it. So they got to pick it up. But this schedule is not doing them any favors, but they have to deal with that adversity of the schedule and fight and get to 500 or better, period.
Yeah, for sure. Tim, what are your thoughts on the upcoming schedule?
It's definitely rough. I do think the Wizards will probably get 1 or 2 wins out west. They just I don't know. I think they're going to be desperate to end the losing streak. It's obviously tough for them to win the majority of the games just with all their injuries and the way they're playing. But I do think they have a little bit of pride left. I just think in reality, they're probably going to have an even worse record when it comes, down to the stretch. So they are better off to tank in a good draft year. But, it's still early. Maybe they can show us something. It just doesn't look good. And the schedule only gets worse.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be brutal. Earlier thoughts on the upcoming schedule.
So, yeah, this is pretty brutal. That decision whether to tank or not to tank, I think maybe the decision might have been made if like the injuries have happened and I don't think maybe like the Orlando game is like they can win that game because they're also pretty bad. But even they have some young talent. They're pretty deep. And I think I'd take Orlando's bench over our bench for sure. But the Lakers, they already beat the Wizards. The Clippers, we saw what happened. These are all road games too, and most of them until they come back home to Philly. And Philly will probably want revenge for that really close loss they had in DC, and they didn't even have Joel Embiid in that game. Maybe some of these other teams will have injuries, but the Nuggets game is pretty safe to say that's a loss, and maybe they can come away with this. The Lakers game could be competitive. And Sacramento is actually one of the best home teams in the NBA, surprisingly, since they have this light the beam celebration.
Yeah.
And it's gone kind of viral. So it could get pretty ugly. And Beal, maybe Beal comes back. Maybe they can get a couple wins, but without Beal and definitely without Porzingis, they might not win a game until maybe they're back at home.
Yeah. I don't believe in a whole lot of good things are going to happen in the next 2 weeks, but yeah, maybe they'll prove me wrong. I
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, so there's a Pokemon in trying to catch it.
Maybe Johnny Davis will turn out to be a good pick if we get the number one pick.
Maybe listen to our show and become the most incredible.
No, I meant like if we're terrible and we get the number one pick, then he's a great pick.
Yeah, maybe that might be true. Or maybe he comes in the second year and actually plays like Mal with so possible. All right, I think that we have kind of covered the Wizards champ. Let people know what's happening on the No Spot podcast. I was actually lurking on your Twitch channel this weekend. You're doing lots of cool things. I do like your watch alongs that you do and your podcast, and it was nice to see you and Sith. I didn't say anything because I knew I was going to be coming in and out, but it was fun to be able to lurk you guys and let people know more about the No Spots podcast and what you guys got going on.
All right, so this coming Thursday on our Twitch channel, we will be live stream recording the podcast for the cover of World Tag League and Super Junior Tag League. The finals are this Wednesday. It will be Leo Rush and Yo versus Ace Austin and Chris Bay, and then the main event, Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi against Aussie Open. Two teams will seal their fate and send themselves to Wrestle Kingdom 17 for shots at their respective divisions tag team championships. Myself and Sage will cover that on that podcast. And then on Friday, because Sith will has something going on Saturday, Friday we will have the weekly wrestling podcast where we will recap NXT Deadline, which had a very unique match on there to determine number one contenders for the NXT Championship and NXT Women's Championship. And we will cover that as well as the weekend review. All of that will take place on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TrueNoSpotsPod, with the audio versions going up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate you rocking the merch tonight as well. I actually have a surprise for Arun in just a few minutes. He's been finally
not exactly a surprise anymore.
It's a year in the making.
I was surprised it exists.
It's surprised it's taken this long.
Yeah.
I guess it should be. But he's gonna finally get his sweatshirt because we finally got to hang out.
Let's do it on air.
So we'll do it on air at the end of the show tonight. But I appreciate you repping. I usually wear my merch, but this shirt I've worn for all 4 games for the Capitals this week, and wore it under my jersey and got a big win. So I didn't give a shout out to the Cap shirt. It's cool. I don't know if people know this. It was a limited edition Stan Lee where he drew the Capitals mascot, which I thought was really cool. A small comic book series, and I've always thought it was an awesome mascot. So, Champ, thank you so much for joining us. I know we don't have any football tonight. I will say real quickly before we let you go, some football news. It's really exciting that we were able to move up in the standings 2 spots without even playing. So
the Giants got their ass whipped.
Yeah.
Carson came back to my IR to be a backup.
Yeah,
That's the best news yet.
yeah. So I'm excited because we now are at least decently favored to make the playoffs, which a lot of
That's
people
true. Better than
10 weeks ago didn't think that was going to be possible. So
Thanks, Carson Wentz.
Yeah, it's all him.
I do want to send prayers out to Kyler Murray, who suffered a non-contact injury and had to be carted off. It looks like it's very serious. He's a good young man, and hopefully he'll come back stronger and better than ever. I hate to see a player go down like that. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, there's been a lot of sort of big injuries this year, and especially a lot of quarterbacks going down. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes. I don't know. I'd be interested to see, with having 17 weeks now in a season, I wonder if more injuries happen.
Oh, yeah.
Because they have an extra week of football. So I haven't really looked into the statistics too great, but I got to assume that there is. And there's also less weeks of preseason for them to work out some of that stuff. So at least they're not going down, I guess, in preseason, which
because they eliminated a preseason game.
But at the same time, it's still obviously it's still an issue. So but injuries probably can't ever really be taken out of football as it's currently constructed. All right, Champ. Well, any final things, anything you want to share before we let you go?
Just happy belated birthday, Robbie. Glad to have been here. And one of these days I'll show up to the man cave and hang out with you guys, and we'll chat it up and have fun eventually. But until then, no kigenyo. Sayonara.
Thank you so much, Champ. I really
Have a good one.
appreciate it. All right, we're gonna bring in Stuart here. We're gonna switch my screen over to World Cup as well. Let's